Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're talking about elk hunting pressure and the setup that finds bulls after that opening weekend pressure hits, because opening weekend changes the mountain fast. When those trucks show up, the ATVs hit the roads, the camps appear, and guys start bugling from every ridge, hiking the obvious trails, glassing the obvious basins, and blowing their scent through country that looked perfect before the season started. Then, all at once, the elk seem like they disappeared. Imagine that. But they don't really disappear. They just adjust it. And that's the mistake a lot of elk hunters make after opening weekend. They keep hunting the mountain like nothing changed. They keep checking the same meadows, calling from the same ridges, and expecting elk to act like they did before the pressure hit. But after opening weekend, you're not hunting the preseason map anymore. You're hunting the pressure map. And that's what we're going to break down today. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter. Most elk hunters hear the word pressure and immediately think they need to go further. And that's sometimes true. Sometimes elk do move deep. Sometimes they move into rougher country away from the roads, trails, camps, and repeated human activity. But that's not always the whole story. Pressure doesn't always push elk further. It just pushes them safer. That's a big difference. A bull doesn't necessarily sit there and say, I need to be 5 miles from the trailhead. He's looking at security. He wants wind advantage. He wants cover. He wants escape routes. He wants a place where he can hear danger, smell danger, and avoid being seen during daylight. Pretty simple. That might be deep wilderness, right? But it might also be a nasty little pocket 700 yards from a road that every hunter walks past because it looks too ugly or too steep or too thick or just too hard to hunt. Humans are lazy, and that's why elk hunting success rates are pretty darn low. After opening weekend, don't just ask, where did the elk go? Ask, where did pressure make them feel safe enough to stay? It might be somewhere you don't want to go, but that's the question that's going to change how you hunt. After opening weekend, you need to scout hunters just as much as you scout elk. That sounds strange, but it matters. Hunters are predictable. Most guys park in the same obvious pullouts. They hike the same trails. They glass the same openings. They walk ridge lines that look good on a map. They call from easy benches. They avoid deadfall and brush. They avoid steep side hills and dark timber. And they avoid country that makes them uncomfortable. And those patterns create pressure lanes for the elk. Elk learn those pressure lanes really fast. They might not understand your exact plan, but they understand disturbance. They know where trucks stop. They know where voices carry. They know where scent drifts from. They know where people keep appearing. Now, if you only scout elk after opening weekend, you're missing half the equation. You need to mark the human activity first. So I usually start backwards and look at the access. Where are people starting? Where are they stopping? What country are they over hunting? What country are they avoiding? Love those spots. Then look at the terrain from the elk's perspective. A good post-pressure setup starts by understanding where hunters are pushing from, because that tells you where elk are most likely to avoid, cross, or hide, right? That setup that I want you to think about after opening weekend is what I'd call the pressure funnel setup. You're not setting up randomly. You're not just going deep. You're looking for the places where pressure, escape, and security all connect. First, try to identify the pressure source. That could be a trailhead, a road, maybe an ATV route, just a popular basin, an outfitter camp, glassing knobs, or ridges where every hunter wants to bugle from. Second, identify the escape route for the elk. How can elk leave that pressure without exposing themselves? Maybe it's a timbered saddle or a brushy draw, a creek bottom, a side hill bench, or a shaded finger ridge, or maybe just a north slope. Third, identify the security pockets. Where can that bull stop, bed, stage, and hold all during daylight without feeling exposed? That meeting point is where the setup gets good. Most hunters just chase the noise. Better hunters predict the response. After opening weekend, good elk country doesn't always look pretty either. In fact, a lot of the best country I know looks really miserable. Dark timber, blowdown, steep north slopes, brushy cuts, those broken benches, little hidden pockets behind obvious ridges, thick cover near water, nasty side hills below basins that everybody glasses, but nobody wants to go in. That's the kind of country that pressured elk trust.
Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations in Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory, it's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com.
Bull doesn't need a giant, untouched wilderness area every time pressure hits. He just needs a small place where human contact drops off. He needs enough cover to disappear. He needs enough wind advantage to feel secure. And he needs enough terrain complexity that most hunters hesitate. They don't want to go in there. That's why ugly country can become beautiful country. That's what it looks like to me. That's what I'm looking for. I want the nasty stuff. After opening weekend especially. If it looks hard to walk through, hard to call in, hard to shoot in, and awkward to approach, you don't want to miss it. That might be the exact reason elk use it. The mistake I see is looking only for the classic elk country, the postcard stuff, right? But after pressure hits, you want to look for security country. That's where bulls start surviving the season. So after opening weekend, calling can still work. I don't want anybody to hear this and think that pressured elk never respond. They absolutely do. But the setup matters more than the sound here. A pressured bull is less forgiving. He might answer once and hang up. He might circle downwind more often. He might stay in cover. He might come in completely silent, which is really common. He might use terrain to check the situation before he commits. That doesn't always mean he's call shy. A lot of times it just means he's set up smart. So too many elk hunters call from where it's convenient. They call from the trail. They call from the open ridge. They call from the spot where they can see well, but where the wind gives them away. Then they blame the elk. But after opening weekend, you need to build the setup before you ever make a sound. Where's your wind going? Where can the bull circle? What route gives him security? Where does he expect danger to come from? Calling might start the conversation, but positioning yourself decides whether that bull ever gives you a real chance. Now, one of the most overlooked windows after opening weekend is probably midday. A lot of elk hunters are predictable in the morning and the evening. They rush the trailhead before daylight. They hit the obvious ridges. They glass the basins. They call hard. Then when things get quiet or frustrating, they head back to the truck. And that changes the pressure map again. Midday doesn't mean elk are suddenly walking around the wide open. I'm not saying that, but it can create more opportunity in pressured areas. Elk may reposition inside the cover. They may get up to water. They may shift beds. They may respond quietly. They may make small movements inside a security pocket that you'd never see from a road or an obvious glassing point. Midday is also when the mountain can get quiet enough for you to actually listen. not to hunters anymore, but to the elk. The key is not wandering around randomly or busting them out of bedding areas. You want to use midday to slip into pressure funnels, check fresh sign, listen, go extremely slow, and set up close to cover without blowing that core out. When the average hunter goes back to camp, the mountain can change. You need to be ready for that window and capitalize on it in high pressured areas. Now, fresh sign after opening weekend is really valuable too. So let's talk about sign for a moment, because it can also get you into trouble. A lot of hunters finally find fresh tracks, poop, rubs, smell elk, or torn up ground, and they get excited. Then they charge straight into the middle of it, and that's how you blow the exact pocket you needed to hunt more carefully. Fresh sign should make you slow down dramatically. It should make you ask better questions. Where did that elk come from? Where was the pressure source? Where's the wind advantage? Where's the bedding cover? Where would he exit if he got bumped? Where can I set up without walking right into his bedroom? The goal isn't to step on every track and prove elk were there, right? You don't have to just trample the area. The goal is to use that sign to build your next setup. If you're finding fresh sign and security cover after opening weekend, you might be close, man. Protect that spot. But close is where discipline matters most, right? Fresh sign is not permission to rush. It's simply evidence that you need to start hunting smarter. Now, a lot of elk hunters think elk strategy has to involve huge country. Big basins, big drainages, big wilderness, big elevation changes, and sometimes that matters. But after opening weekend, those small overlooked pockets can become extremely important. A little bench, a short timbered saddle, a hidden seep, a nasty patch of north-facing timber, a shaded finger ridge between two human travel routes, a little pocket behind a basin everybody hunted on opening morning. Those places might not hold elk all season. They might not look impressive on a map. Elk may not have been there preseason, but after pressure hits, they can hold a bull long enough for a smart hunter to get an opportunity. And that's the point. Pressure can compress elk into the pieces of terrain elk hunters don't fully evaluate. Most hunters are locked in for the obvious elk country, so you need to look for the places where a bull can disappear in plain sight. Small doesn't mean random either. It means specific. And after opening weekend, small, specific spots beat the obvious almost every time. Now, when elk disappear after opening weekend, I don't want you to panic. That's not what I'm saying here. This isn't a doom speech. Run the system. Step one in the system is to identify the pressure. Where are hunters entering? Where are vehicles stopping? Where are people glassing from? Where are the calls coming from? What country is getting pounded? Step two, identify the escape routes. Where can elk leave that pressure while still staying in cover, using terrain, or keeping the wind in their favor? Step three, identify security areas. Where can they bed, stage, water, and survive daylight without exposing themselves? Step four, build your setup. Approach from the least expected direction. Keep your wind out of the core. Set up near the transitions, not in the bedroom. Don't call until the terrain, wind, and cover all make sense. Step five, adjust without panicking. If the sign is old, shift. If pressure moves, shift. If elk talk once and go quiet, don't assume they're gone. Assume that they're just using the terrain better than you are at the moment. Adjust. The elk hunter who finds bulls after opening weekend isn't guessing. He's reading the pressure, predicting the elk escape, and setting up where the security for the elk begins. Now, opening weekend frustrates hunters because it changes the mountain fast. The elk, the easy elk, disappear. The obvious basins go quiet. The bugles get less reliable. The trailheads get crowded. And a lot of hunters start thinking the hunt is over before it really begins. But pressure doesn't end opportunity. It just reveals the better hunter. Because after opening weekend, you can't just hunt memory. You can't just hunt preseason sign. You can't just go back to the same place and hope elk act the same way they did before human pressure hit the mountain. You have to adjust. So study the pressure. Find the escape routes, respect the wind, avoid blowing out the core areas, look for the ugly pockets other hunters skip, set up where bulls feel safe enough to stop. That's how you keep hunting when other guys start guessing when the pressure hits. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making like this is exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. If you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we have an in-person Elk Camp 2026 that is built around this same philosophy: structure, preparation, and execution in real terrain. You can check out our elk camps at backboneunlimited.com. If you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. Please reach out to me in the comments. Love to hear your questions. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.